Hi, welcome back to our next video.
So in this video, we're going to discuss what our five, or what we've rated as our 5 barriers to getting a caravan are.
So the first one is knowledge.
Yeah, so obviously when we're starting out, what I found is there's loads of acronyms for everything. So there's MT, PLM, MAM, AKS. I can't think of any others. So obviously it's understanding what they are. Then you move on to things like tow bars. There's a swan neck tow bar, a detachable tow bar. Obviously the electrics, 13-pin electrics, Alco hitches and things like that. It's just sort of like a bit of a barrage of information that you sort of need to absorb and understand before you can make like an informed decision.
Unfortunately, you've looked into it a bit so you understand it
Yeah,
more than I do.
and also having mum and dad obviously being quite keen caravanners themselves, they know a lot of this information anyway, particularly dad. So they've been a great source of information as well as sort of magazines.
You only used your dad's motor mover a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. That's something that we definitely want. It's literally just like a big remote control car.
But the other bits like awnings we're undecided on because we're going to move around quite quickly, like every few days.
Well, that's the plan anyway.
But yeah, even like gas types and
security, caravan security, that's another thing. So yeah, and even just sort of like best practices, like how to load a caravan in terms of weight and things like that. So yeah, we're just sort of at the stage of just absorbing and trying to understand all of this information.
Thing is, it's going to be, we think, a 10-year investment before we look to buy another one, so it's a big risk.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of the solution, for us, it's just been a case of educating ourselves. I found YouTube to be like probably the biggest source of information. There's some really good channels out there that I've enjoyed watching and have learned quite a lot from. But even things just like Practical Caravan, that's a really good source of information. I mean, quite a lot of the stuff I skip through, i.e. site reviews and things like that at the minute, because I'm not quite at that stage. I feel, not that it's pointless looking at sites, but I think that'd be a section of the magazines later on down the line that perhaps I find a bit more interesting. Things like forums, they're really good. People are happy to share advice and things on forums. And even just talking to people that are interested. When we actually went away, when did we go away? At the beginning of the year when we hired the motorhome. Mum and dad are looking for a roll-up awning and they saw one on site when I spoke to the people, and people are generally quite happy to talk about this. So yeah, if you've got any problems or you just sort of want to understand more, speak to people and just sort of immerse yourself in all of the information that's out there and available. Unfortunately, there's just quite a lot to understand, isn't there?
Yeah, I think caravan people generally like to speak about caravans.
Of course they do.
When they're on site.
Yeah, everyone's happy to talk about a caravan, which is good. So our second barrier is our tow car. A couple of years ago, I bought an EV, an MG ZS EV. Really lovely car in every respect. It's probably the best car we've ever owned, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
And for me at the time, it was perfect. I was commuting into Brighton. It was really cheap, or it is really cheap to run, and I will continue to have an EV all the time I can afford to have one. But if we're to have a caravan, perhaps that's not really a realistic thing anymore. Perhaps we need to change it, but that's sort of what we're going to delve into in this. Like we are with the caravan though, before I got the EV, I had to sort of educate myself because so used to having petrol and diesel vehicles before that an EV was a bit of a departure, and actually it was, like I say, the best thing we've ever done. We've got some really good benefits, i.e. how quick they are to warm up, how cheap they are to drive, and things like that. They're things that I really enjoy. However, the current car that we've got does actually have some things that I don't like, i.e. I hate the armrest design that really like digs into my arm. It's not very comfortable. Some it's like a mouse trap, it just snaps and you can't get it in the right position. You find that as well, don't you?
Yeah, it's only on the driver's side though.
Yeah, it is. The passenger side's absolutely fine. So yeah, but the biggest obviously hurdle to that is it's not rated to tow. So that's where we sort of got onto or why we decided to get a second car, as I think I mentioned in my last video, or in our last video. We're currently doing an extension, and we thought, let's get an old car that we can run around in and take things to the tip. But if we got one with a tow bar, perhaps I could practice towing, because I don't really want to invest in a caravan if actually I don't enjoy towing. So we decided not to actually spend that much on our second car, as it was only going to be used for tip runs. So much so that actually we ended up with a lemon. Surprise, surprise. Obviously, if you don't spend that much on a car, it's obviously a bit of a risk. But there we are. It's just one of life's things, isn't it? However, that's left us in a position where neither car that we've got is actually fit for purpose. So we are going to need to look to get a new car if we're obviously going to consider getting a caravan. In an ideal world, I would love to have an EV again, i.e. something like a Hyundai Ioniq 5 or a Kia EV6, or even something like a Polestar 2, but they're Tesla Model Y, fab car, but for us they're just too much out of our price range, I think, wouldn't you say?
Just about. Some of them are on the borderline, but it's stretching ourselves at a time where we really don't want to be doing that.
No, exactly. I think it would be silly too. So, we're now in like a bit of a quandary as to do we buy, I'm reluctant to do this, a cheapy old car, maybe sort of spend $5 or $6 and just sort of luck of the draw. I think if you've got something like a Volvo, you might be okay as long as it's been serviced. But do we get something like spend $4, $5, $6 on an old diesel that would probably serve us just fine, or do we maybe go down the like hybrid route, because then that will give me the EV side of things that I want for when we commute to work and the ability to tow with the caravan. But it's one of those things, is it the best of both worlds because you can tow and you can drive an electric, or is it the worst of both worlds because actually you don't really get that great a range? And for us, our commute to work's 30, 35 mile round trip. Yeah. So that's really maximum, or will be pushing the boundary of what a plug-in hybrid would be able to provide us with in terms of range.
And one of your concerns with a hybrid was the sort of carrying around of the battery as well. So
that's always been one of the things. I've just thought I've never seen a really good use case for a hybrid, because when you're using the internal combustion engine, obviously you're not going to get very good MPG because you're hauling around an electric motor and a battery, which you wouldn't otherwise have in a traditional petrol or diesel car, and vice versa. When you're on electric only or just in EV mode driving around, you're hauling around an internal combustion engine. So it's one of those things, but then it's, like I say, it's either the best of both worlds or the worst of both worlds, depending on which way you look at it.
So the third barrier would be confidence or inexperience?
Yeah, I mean, I was and still am nervous to tow a caravan because I've never done it before. But I really thought probably the best way, before we spend any money on a caravan or anything like that, would be to actually just try towing a trailer. Fortunately, my dad's got one. So with the Passat, me and him went out one night. We just went to a local car park, really quiet. And he put a couple of wooden, or what would you call them? Like, he would call them horses, but I think they're like, where you like cut wood on, things like that. Took some of those down to a local car park, and he set them out and pretended they were parked cars so I could practice reversing and things like that. And actually out on the main road, just driving around, I didn't find it that difficult driving with a trailer. Just take corners a bit wider, go a bit slower, just be a bit more sensible. Admittedly, the trailer's probably only 3-4 meters long, whereas a caravan's probably going to be about double the length. So I am expecting it to be completely different, as well as the weight. Obviously,
it's also the vision, isn't it? So it'll be taller and wider.
Yeah, that's true. I must say, yeah, that's a very good point. When I was looking over my shoulder to look out the back while I was reversing, obviously I didn't have a big white box obstructing vision. I could see over the top of the trailer. So yeah, that's obviously a very good point.
I know you saw at the NEC they were doing sort of towing courses that you're interested in.
Yeah, they do. So actually, if you go to the NEC, which we are going to next week, which we're really excited about, unfortunately I couldn't book in on one of their towing experiences, which is unfortunate because they were fully booked, but that's just the way it is. However, I would like to do, I think the Caravan and Motorhome Club, or no, get it in the right order, is it the Motorhome and Caravan Club and the Camping and Caravan Club? They offer sort of accredited tow courses, so I think it would be valuable to do something like that just to improve knowledge and build confidence before we go and invest in a caravan.
Ultimately, you've got to want it enough to push yourself outside your comfort zone, though, don't you?
Yeah, and to be honest, I do like driving. I don't think we're going to struggle. I don't think I'd struggle with it really, he says with confidence. But like I say, I really enjoy driving. That said, I know there will be times where you go down a narrow road and you'll be like, why am I doing this? But I'm sure every caravan has had that sort of experience. So yeah, I plan just to sort of do as much practice as we can and then just immerse ourselves in it. That probably is really the best way to learn, is just to sort of get on with it. But yeah. Okay, so our fourth barrier is decisiveness and sort of actually understanding that things need to be a bit of a compromise.
Yeah, so sort of priorities in picking layout, for example.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many different layouts, isn't there?
It's kind of like buying a house. You have your must-haves with like-to-haves and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and to be honest, we have actually done that. We have written a list of things that like non-negotiable, i.e. having a separate shower. For me, that's non-negotiable. And then there are some things that would be nice to have, and that would be a fixed bed would be nice to have, but it's non-essential.
From my point of view, we looked into sort of value for money, and is there more value for money used versus new?
It's always budget, isn't it, with you? Blimey, God, he's such a party pooper. But anyway, yeah, but no, you're right. Budget is important. And yeah, obviously, if you buy a used van, you're more likely to get things like a motor mover and things like that included. Whereas if you buy new, perhaps you've got more peace of mind because you've got a warranty. So it's just sort of weighing up the pros and cons of that. And also just understanding where is important to make a compromise. Obviously, everyone's view on that is going to be different, isn't it? So as I mentioned, we're going to the NEC next week. So we're hoping to obviously nail the layout issue next week. Although I think we've kind of refined what it is that we're after.
Yeah, you can't make your mind up what bed layout you want though.
Yeah, exactly. To be honest, there's several caravans that are under consideration if we go down the new route. But we went to, a few weeks ago, we went to Lady Bailey, didn't we? And because we really wanted to see the Bailey D44, we've not seen that at all. We've managed to see it. And while we were there, we just looked around their used stock. And actually, some of their used stock was really nice, wasn't it? Because obviously what you'd be paying for a brand new Bailey D44, you could get a maybe 4-year-old, much higher spec, well, in their case Bailey, because that's what they were selling, that was maybe a bit nicer. But with that, they're heavier. And ultimately, if this is going to be a long-term investment, I say long-term investment, 10 years, I think that is quite a long time, but who knows, you probably get the bug and maybe after 2 years of having it, you want to go and get a new caravan, because I know that's the case for mum and dad. More mum than dad, but yeah. Yeah, so it's just sort of weighing up that actually looking to the future, if we want an EV, do we perhaps want a more lightweight van? And understanding that it's all a bit of a compromise. Obviously, whilst caravans are quite large, they're not massive. There's always going to be a compromise to be made, but when you, or for us, comparing it to a tent, this enables us to go away in winter. We won't have to pack away a soggy bottom tent or anything. Oh, it's going to be fab. But yeah, space is obviously limited, so it's just picking a layout and things like that that maximise the space that's available.
So the last barrier on our list is storage, or where we're going to park it up. Obviously, at the moment we've got work going on at home, and even when that's complete, we've got limited space in where we can park it at home.
Yeah, I mean, we've got enough length on our driveway down the side of the house, but then that means we probably wouldn't be able to access the caravan that easily. So we'd have to roll it out and roll it back each time we wanted to get in or out of the caravan, which I know, whilst I say that's fine now, that will be a bit of a faff. We could get one across the front of our driveway, couldn't we? But it would have to be quite a short caravan, and it's kind of weighing up the ease of access versus obviously the layout that a larger caravan can give you, what the benefit is. Like I say, as works being completed at the minute, we've currently got 2 cars and a van parked on the drive most weeks, and Dad needs access up and down the side. So I'm not saying we're going to get one next weekend, but if we did, we wouldn't be able to store it here, I wouldn't have thought. And in terms of other places, obviously we could put it into storage, but there's a cost associated with that.
Although I would say the storage cost is cheaper than I thought it would be.
Oh, see, I thought that was quite expensive. Well, it does depend, because there's different standards, isn't there? I'm sure it's a lot cheaper to park it on, I don't know, maybe some farmland with a gate. I don't know what that would charge, but if you're looking at some sort of like accredited places that have got security and things like that. It runs to several £100 a year and is also having availability. I looked around online to see what storage places there were, found what I thought was a really good place. It was, I don't know, probably 25-minute drive away. The price looked fine. I think it was £500 a year-ish. But they're full, so obviously they wouldn't be able to take a caravan from us.
And equally, there's not that many in our location, really, are there?
No, there isn't actually. Not in the immediate area. See, there are some, but we might end up then having to travel an hour. And when you think, oh, if you've got to wash a caravan, get it ready for going away, things like that, that then creates a barrier in using it. So it's a short-term thing, though. Perhaps that's a compromise we could make.
I think when we were looking for a caravan, we wanted to get one that ideally can fit onto our driveway, didn't we?
Yeah. I wouldn't want an ongoing storage cost, but perhaps that's something we could suck up in the immediate future. So, as I mentioned a couple of times, we're off to the NEC next week, which we're really excited about.
Yeah, we went in February. He's banging on about going ever since.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I really enjoyed it. When I was a kid, I went with Dad. We went to Earl's Court once or twice, I think. Really enjoyed that, looking around all the different caravans. Obviously, caravans were different then. I think we looked at an Avondale Dart. Avondale aren't even going anymore. Yeah, but actually, we've actually got quite a nice few days away, haven't we? We're going to see a comedian on the Thursday. On the Friday, I'm doing an off-road experience, and then on the Saturday, we've got tickets for the NEC. What I really like about the NEC is it's not just, obviously it's caravans, motorhomes, but there's all the stands as well that you can look at all the caravan accessories. So it's basically just everything under one roof. And I think it's bigger than the February one, isn't it? I think it might be over more halls.
That's what you told me the other day.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I heard that somewhere or read that somewhere. So yes, we've got an exciting weekend next weekend. Oh, we'll be weekend wanderers, won't we? Cool. Right. Well, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.